Matt Brown Show. This episode is proudly brought to you by XContent, a gold Microsoft partner with a pure focus on the cloud and data security. So with me on the line is the founder of XContent, Danie Lange. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt.
Danie, why don't you give us the elevator pitch? So for those of our business owners around the world and in South Africa, all across Africa, listening to us right now, and potentially who haven't heard of the amazing work that XContent is doing in the cloud and security space, give us the elevator pitch. What do we need to know about XContent?
Well, we're basically a cloud managed services provider looking after infrastructure as well as the workloads in the cloud that it provides. So we try and be a fully 360-degree dimensional offer to the customer in terms of the services, managing the cloud environment, but also leveraging the capabilities that the cloud workloads and specifically the Microsoft cloud workloads allow you from a data and AI perspective. How do you enable the data within those environments? How do you secure it? How do you maintain it? So we basically work with a company's IT department. It's not an outsourced model, but to help them to move from a business unit that's a typical overhead, keeping the lights on, into an environment that they can actually contribute to the success factors of the business and the strategy moving.
Danie, obviously we're all very familiar with something called COVID. I'd love to get your expert's view on, what is the impact, or what has COVID impacted in terms of, the roadmap of cloud adoption? Because it seems to me that, we were kind of forced to do things that we were thinking about prior to COVID. Like, in other words, working remotely was a nice to have. It wasn't an essential. Now it's an essential. So modern workplace being a cloud and Teams being a cloud, Microsoft cloud stack proposition. What have you seen in terms of the maturity now of, cloud adoption within the South African market?
Well, in our own customer base that we have picked up is the customers that went on the cloud journey already by the time that COVID hit. Their business operations was pretty much unaffected. The ones that was thinking about it, but still very much on premise, obviously had a bit more of a disruptive environment and a couple of hectic weeks on the onset of the lockdowns that we had towards the end of March last year. But since they've made that move, and what we've picked up in the overall base is COVID was probably the biggest catalyst for digital transformation that we could have hoped to ever have witnessed.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more in that. And so what have you seen practically in terms of XContent's ability to kind of really help customers move that cloud adoption needle? So specifically what I'd like to cover here is all the types of products that you typically work with. So I'm on your website currently. If I just bring it up for everybody, you'll be able to see what I mean here. So this is the XContent website. Take a look at this. There's a lot of products that you guys have built specifically on the Microsoft Cloud Stack, and we're going to cover something called XC Insights in a moment. But could you just walk us through maybe 2 or 3 of some of the products and how they can kind of help your target customers or business owners kind of move to a more secure, scalable cloud environment?
I think if you look at the overall cloud journey, we work very much on the principle of a cloud maturity model. So people will move from on-premise into the cloud. There's a lot of technology that's unlocked in the move to the cloud that financially, from a budget perspective, affordability perspective, was just out of reach while they were on-premise. It now suddenly becomes available when they move to the cloud. So you will typically have phase 1 would be the move, the lift and shift of server infrastructure, migrating workloads like Exchange, Mail, file shares and things like that into things like SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive for Business, for instance. And once that portion is done, you start with the maturity roadmap with a customer where you start moving from infrastructure as a service to platform as a service, ultimately to software as a service, where you can make full use of what the cloud actually brings to the table. And the solutions that we built on top of that at cloud from our side then is actually around how do we start to leverage that data and the capabilities around it? A product like XCTMS, which is a tire management solution that we put into large fleets to monitor the wear and tear on tires and tire management, how much the air pressure in it is, and bringing that data into play so that you can start to apply predictive analytics to it to work out cents per kilometer and proactively say, this truck needs to move from Petersburg to Cape Town. Will the truck actually make that round trip with the tires that's currently on the rig, or do we need to maybe replace some of those and use it before we retread it or remove it on shorter trips on another rig maybe?
So Danie, could you help me understand and our audience understand, obviously cloud is relevant to all businesses of all sizes and pretty much any industry. Is there a particular industry specialism that you have, or are you kind of like agnostic around the industries and customers that you work with?
Our overall approach is agnostic, so we don't focus on a specific vertical, but we have solutions that then focus in specific areas more towards specific businesses. Like I mentioned, TMS, for instance, is more into the transport and logistics business. That's a very specific vertical focus. We have on the XC Insights platform some solutions that will work more towards smart buildings, for instance, that will play back to the real estate, realtors, building management, facility management, and those type of solutions. We've got a product called Product Information Manager that handles master data, and how you interact with the vendors of the system from there, which is very much back into the manufacturing vertical to a very large extent, and industries that make use of MRO, maintenance repair operations, in their facilities. So although our own focus is not industry specific, the solutions that we build does tend to become industry specific around us.
Okay, I understand. So there's obviously a lot of Microsoft partners out there, and I think what's really apparent to me is choosing the right partner if you're going to do something around lift and shift workloads or basically anything, email migration. You want to make sure that your business is in the safe hands of a managed services provider or a partner such as XContent. I'd love to understand, obviously, it's clear to me that you're very innovative as a team and as a business. You have a lot of products. And as I mentioned, we'll get into XC Insights. But what makes XContent different to other partners out there?
Well, I guess that's a difficult question because everybody is going to have an answer for that one, aren't they? I think from our perspective, it's not about the money. It's about the customer service and really understanding it. I think there's certain words like innovation and customer service that is thrown around quite a lot and people don't really understand what it means. If you deliver what the customer has paid for, and you deliver it at 100%. That's not customer service. He paid for it. He deserved what you put down. So the question around customer service is, what do you do as a value add? What's that extra mile that you go to assist your customer? And we work very hard with our customers to really get into that position where we can be trusted advisors to their business. And we don't have a big customer turnover. We've got customers that we had in some cases now for 12 years and still going strong. We're not box droppers. So we try and work with them, understand their business, be part of their business, be part of their strategy committees and those type of things to provide that roadmap, provide the input from a technology stack in terms of what they can and cannot do. And that seems to work for us. It's putting them first. As an example, when COVID hit, we developed on the Power Platform from Microsoft a couple of COVID applications for tracking incident management and screening. And we made those available to our customer base free of charge. We didn't charge for it. And they still use it today. And it's not a case of we gave it to them for 3 months and then say, okay, you are using this now, but now it's time to pay. Our aim is not to make money out of those. It's about providing that service because we can, and then assist them with the other parts of business where obviously we will get our return on investment.
So what I'm hearing, Danie, for you, it's about long-term partnerships over short-term commercial gain.
Yes, it always is. And in a lot of the cases, we actually will work to build a partnership with a customer. So it's not just a customer-supplier relationship, but actually a mutually beneficial environment where we can take some of our solutions via the channels that's available to our customers to market as well. So it becomes a win-win relationship. And those are the type of environments that we're working towards.
Yeah, there's an old saying that I love, which goes like this: is like, trust is earned in drops but lost in buckets. And in many cases, in a partner-led engagement like the one that Microsoft obviously has with you and XContent, and obviously the end customer, I think it's so important to build trust. And it's difficult to know who to choose. I mean, as an example, we've got technology products of our own that are not sitting on Azure, and so if I didn't, it's difficult objectively to know who to trust. Do you know what I'm saying? So if you need to do something around cloud, you need to move a workload over there, you want more security, you want more systems uptime or application uptime, you just don't know who to trust. So what does a business look for in sort of accolades or accreditations, trust factors or trust criteria? What does a business owner, or what should a business owner look for when it comes to choosing a partner?
I think that's a difficult one. I can only speak from my own experience and what we are trying to achieve. So obviously, I think word of mouth is probably always and will always be one of your biggest go-to markets. And coming back to the statement you made about trust is earned in drops, it's a slow process. It's like an oil tanker, and it picks up speed over time, but it's not something that you can't push it. I think from that perspective as well, what we try and do is just to say, you know what, let's package our offerings to market and our engagement with a potential customer in such a manner that we remove a risk as much as possible. So I'm not going to offer you a 3-year managed services contract upfront that you need to commit to with a upfront investment in technology or anything like that. That might be a bar or 2 bar and then do the rest. It's breaking down those barriers to entry, remove a risk for the customer, and then deliver on what you promised you would do. Build that trust and then take it further. Provide them with value adds to show them that you are trustworthy, and work it from there.
Thank you, Danie, for that. That really helps, I'm sure, a lot of businesses out there. Quick question from my side. You mentioned right up front in the interview something about data and AI. I'd love to get your view, as you're really on the coalface of data and AI and security and cloud. So this is a space that's constantly changing. It's constantly moving. It's constantly maturing. What are some top-line trends that you see in the market around the use of data and artificial intelligence or machine learning? What do you see happening out there currently, trends-wise?
I think that's almost a question of how long is a piece of string, because there's so many angles and so many surfaces in terms of how people look at this, and each business has got a different view. So the question would be rather, what would you want as your endpoint insight when you start with those? Like I mentioned, the cloud technology also brings a lot of technology to the market that typically wouldn't have been made available to them, just from a cost entry perspective, hardware and software wise. So there's a huge learning curve for everyone in that, in terms of how do you look at data. And I think that's where the opportunity is lying, is how do you enable data to make decisions looking forward based on the data that you have. And that data is not just data that's generated internally to a business, but data that's available on the outside, on the macro side of the economy, that's got an influence on your business as well, and bringing those together. I think a lot of people, a lot of our customers look at this, and their whole idea around this is is fancy reports and fancy dashboards. But just showing them a view of historic data is not enabling you. You're not becoming a data-driven business because of that. Utilizing the workloads that is made available through technologies that's available on Azure. You've got some of it obviously on platforms like AWS as well, where you can apply machine learning and really start to bring AI to the fore. That's when people will start to see the big difference. But again, I honestly also believe that this is very much part of your maturity model. It's almost a case of you don't know what you don't know. So it's a case of saying, if we look at this, again, coming back to that journey with a customer, understanding their business and where they aim to be, and working with them to say, if we take these data points from your side and maybe bring IoT into the play as well, to do some of the things that you have in terms of number of feet through a building or a shopping center, marry those to tie it up with some environmental data that you get from a third-party supplier, and then start to play out what-if scenarios with a customer, you'll start to get the answers. But I think it's very much a maturity model based on the technology stack and the stuff that the people doesn't have access to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Danie, there's a lot of lip service being paid to predictive decision making and AI, and it's like take the next 10,000 startups, just add AI. But it's like it's almost like a marketing gimmick now, where it's like, I have a product, and let's just say it's a SaaS product, or a cloud product. It's almost like, well, if it doesn't have AI, it's not cool enough. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'd love to maybe get your view. To what extent are you practically applying AI in your business? And what is your advice to a potential customer around how to work with data in the context of artificial intelligence and building out the capability slowly, like picking a use case, for instance, around AI. So for instance, analyzing invoices or whatever the case is. So pure digital transformation use case. So what's your advice to someone who's looking, or a CEO or a CIO who's looking at data and AI and going, hey, we have to do something, right? We have to reduce cost. We have to do something about it. I just don't know where to start. What's your advice to that person?
I honestly think that AI, in the concept that most people understand it, is your end game. And that's probably a couple of years away from us at this point in time. Microsoft's renowned for it, that they actually apply AI and they sort of stick to it. And kudos to them, they really do eat their own pudding. But there's a lot of shortfalls in that model where it is today. The maturity of the technology, the maturity level of the people engaging with the data, there's a lot of things that still require some proper intelligence and not artificial intelligence to give it to you. So I think where we are in this journey today, technologies or slang terms like predictive analytics and identifying patterns is probably a better concept or a better goal towards AI that companies can aim to go for right now, which will align their data-driven decision-making more towards what they're trying to achieve with business, and to just say, let's go for a full AI picture at the end of the day. I think a very big problem of that, or challenge that you have within it as well, is your own employee base and their understanding of what they can do with the data, and how can it better my life? How can it better my environment in terms of delivering what I need to do in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever the case might be, and not seeing it as this potential threat hanging over my head. Because if this system is if AI is going to start doing my job, then what is my job actually going to be? I'm going to become redundant. And, you've got those challenges as well, and you end up with a business where not everybody is working towards the same goal.
Yeah, it is a scary time, right? I mean, I think I read a stat the other day that AI is likely to automate and replace something like the jobs of 1 billion people by 2030. And so the whole future of work seems to be changing. I mean, as you touched on right up front, Danie, with COVID, it's obviously accelerated, a lot of the future of work ideas that I think many people were playing around with intellectually in like think tanks. So I'd love to get your view. Like, how much of a threat do you feel is AI in the context of the future of work? Is it an enabler, or is it going to be something that's going to fundamentally change everything we think about, the future of work?
Look, I think it's going to be an enabler. It's not going to change that much. We've actually gone through some of those changes. If you look at business over the last 20 years, a lot of us grew up with your dad as a secretary. That's a job title that doesn't exist today. It transformed into personal assistant to a certain level, but it actually moved into much more than that, where those people that traditionally was the secretaries are adding a lot more to business processes in terms of what they do. That changed. How's that different from somebody that today is a normal debtors or creditors clerk that now can start doing some additional work and add more value to it? So I think it's just a mindset thing in terms of how people look at it. But the reality is these changes has been applied over the last 100 plus years already. We're just not thinking of it because people would rather try this to buzzwords like AI or fourth industrial revolution and those type of concepts. But it's nothing different than how it changed between 1980 and 2000 in some job areas.
Yeah, it's interesting. Everyone that's banging the fourth industrial revolution drum can't actually tell me what the previous three revolutions were. It's quite interesting. People seem to jump on that bandwagon, right?
Yeah, I think I feel the same way. I know there's a lot of companies, a lot of industries that actually love to actually utilize that word. To me, it's just technology has become more accessible through the advent of cloud. That's helping us to be more effective in what we do and be able to actually utilize some of the technologies we didn't have access to. It's not a revolution. It's an enabler, and it changes the way we do business. And obviously, yes, that's accelerating, but it's been accelerating for the last 30 years, or 50 years even. So it's not really that different.
Yep, I agree with you. I think that's a great point of departure to now actually shift gears and talk about XC Insights. So this is a new product that you are launching. Could you maybe walk us through what exactly is XC Insights? How does it work? What are some of the intended outcomes for this product?
It's actually a concept in a bucket that we had in R&D for a couple of years and played around with some of our ideas and obviously lessons that you take back from your customer base and discussions that you have with them. And it started off with the idea, there was a big play around IoT, and there still is. And there's people that's building very expensive, very comprehensive solutions around IoT. Like I mentioned in the beginning, our focus is around the data and how do you enable data. So we started off with this platform to say, let's build something that can manage your IoT platform from a multi-vendor environment that you bring into the solution. We changed that view a little bit in the sense that we then actually moved it to say, IoT is just another data point. So I can go and subscribe from the South African weather service to the weather database and get feeds from there. I can speak to other companies that's out there provide databases around economic indicators, crime, whatever you want, telematics from the motor vehicles, and you can gain access to those data sources. And there's formal models and APIs that you can use to do that. IoT is just another form of a data source. So we've built this platform to say, you know what, in the back end of this, we build it with a data lake, we build it with a data warehouse, bring the data in, and then enable the data on the outset of what this platform actually does. So XC Insights evolved into our data and AI platform, which is based in Azure. We handle some of the main engines on our Azure subscription. but your data from a customer perspective actually resides within the customer's own subscription, his own tenant. So they remain in control of their data. We will aggregate some data out of that, desensitize it, and we always open around how we do and what we do there, and they can see it as well. They provide access through that model. So that we can say, if you want, that's a good example. If I want to know the rainfall of or a number of peppers that's coming out of a greenhouse, I can say that I know out of mine, I have 2 tons a week. And we can say in the area that you have, the average is 2.5 tons. We won't tell you that the farm next to you is doing 3 tons and the one behind you is doing 2.5 and things like that. We'll just give you the average. So we desensitize the data to provide you with traction to see what is the performance. On the back end of that, for instance, as well, and the data that's there, that platform is integrated into Office 365 and the common data services that's lying within the Microsoft Cloud Stack and their dataverse. And we actually created 2 solutions on the back end running off XC Insight. So it's using the same platform, but because it's on the platform, it allows us to create these relatively fast to market. So the one is a product called eCard that we've built that replaces sort of a traditional business card. We took that solution, took us about 3 weeks to have a solution to market, where we integrate into Azure AD, and we can create a digital business card for a user, and they can share it via QR code, or we can program it onto an NFC card that you can scan with your latest Android and Apple phones, for instance. And it's directly straight from there. And we can actually now capture usage data. So who has scanned the QR code for a specific user, how many times? So if you've got a salesperson out there and he's supposed to go and catch new logos, you can actually see how many people did he engage with, how many people did he share that card with. On the back end of it, you also score in terms of costs. So, you print business cards, typically it's in batches of 500. You pay a couple of £1,000 in every batch that you do because it's for a number of people. And in most cases, our own experience as well, you need to reprint it way before the cards are finished because the telephone number has changed, or job title has changed, or company logo has changed. And it's a lot of costs involved in that. Now you print one card for a user and you tell him if he loses it, he's going to pay for the other one. But it's not necessary because he can share the QR code and it's out. The other system that we've created is a system called Roombook 365, which utilizes additional space that you have. And especially on the back end of where we are with COVID, a lot of companies have scaled down in terms of their office requirements. People can work from home, and suddenly they sit with assets that they don't know what to do with. This system ties into, again, Azure AD and your Office 365 platform, and you can then actually make meeting rooms, parking spaces, rooftops for entertainment, any space that you can basically think of, available. Hot desks, you can go in and you can book. You can use it internally and the people can use it, but the system supports online gateway, payment gateway as well, so that they can go in and they can actually pay for it. So you can become one of these generic spaces that you rent out with the areas that you've got and generate a revenue model out of that, basically within a couple of minutes.
Sure, that's pretty impressive. So how much of a let's just say, enabler is IoT going to be? Because one of the key trends that I picked up on recently is that it's predicted by 2024 that there's going to be 83 billion IoT devices. That's 10 times more than there are humans on the planet. So this is seemingly for entrepreneurs trying to wrap his head around even what some of the opportunities are, or as a CIO in a business, he's looking at IoT I've heard before, but I'm not really getting it. So how much of a enabler is IoT going to be for a future fit business, in your opinion?
I think it will play a key role. And I think it depends on industry, and business to business, it will differ as well. So I think if you look at IoT, the question is all good and well to say you create a data point. Again, what are you going to do with that data point? So if you use it for a smart room environment, for instance, so imagine you have a meeting room, and most companies will know this. Your biggest problem is that room is never available, but when you walk past it, there's nobody in there because somebody booked that specific room. The meeting grew for whatever reason, or went smaller and it became a Teams meeting, or it was probably just done into another meeting room and nobody released that one. Now, imagine you take a motion sensor, tie that into Office 365, so that if there's no motion in that specific meeting room 10 minutes after the meeting has started, remove that meeting room from a meeting and make it available so that the next person can walk past and actually see, okay, this room is available, I can meet in here. So you create more utilization of the resources that you have available instead of things just standing open and everybody think it's being used. Utilizing it with COVID compliance protocols, not exceeding 50% of your indoor capacity and things like that. You can monitor those, but on the back end of it, we can create hooks that will actually fire a thing to the security personnel to say that room is overpopulated. You can send somebody in there to go and move them to a bigger room, or say, somebody needs to leave a room. So from a compliance perspective, especially in bigger organizations, that can play a big role. Again, back to COVID regulations, we've automated it for some customers where you book the meeting and then there's a bot in the back end that will automatically book a 10-minute slot between meetings. So if I book a meeting from 9 to 10, 10 to 10:10, there's a 10-minute slot that this thing will book for the cleaning of a room and desanitizing and everything else to take place. And that will then actually send a notification to the kitchen staff or whoever needs to come in and do what they need to do. So you can automate the process. You can increase your efficiencies by utilizing IoT. But I think you need to also understand what's my use case and what do I require to enable that use case. Just putting IoT devices down for the sake of putting it down is not going to make your life better in any way if you don't engage with those data points that you create in some manner in your business process.
I went to a client meeting for the first time in almost 2 years last week, and I walked in there and it was a total SHIT show. I walked in there and it was like walking into. It didn't feel like a business environment. Do you know what I mean? And it was done with papers, and everyone's just doing it in like the bare minimum type of way, where it's kind of like shit can go missing. Like people may not sign out. To your point around compliance, there could be 10 people in a boardroom when there's only supposed to be 5, and it just seems so archaic, in the way that businesses now are kind of working with processes, not even systems, but just processes, generic processes like here's a printout, sign this thing in, take your temperature, spray your hands. But it seems to me like with XE Insights, what you guys can do is really transform. In that simple example, you can really transform the way that entire experience, is delivered from start to finish. Is that correct, Danie?
That's exactly what we set out to do. So coming back to the statement I made earlier, to start engaging with a new customer and removing that initial risk, the huge capital layout for something I'm telling you is going to work, and then business cultures differ, and something that worked like the best thing since sliced bread in one customer can be a total disaster in another one. These things are not cookie cutter solutions. You need to fit it into how business operate. And from that perspective, we designed this platform to be able to be agile, to get in, and at a low cost point, we can actually start delivering value to the customer in those processes, activating those processes, or actually just making sure that they are there and they are being followed. The biggest problem with these paper-based solutions is there's nothing that's going to highlight to you that proper process is not being followed. If you digitize that process, you can put the gates and the flags in to notify people that somebody is taking shortcuts here and act on it accordingly.
Even something like intelligent buildings, if someone's not in the room, turn the lights off, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah, that's something we've actually done, believe it or not, right before the thing hit. When it was done was literally about 2 days before we went into hard lockdown last year. But we don't have light switches in our office building. It's all just based on motion sensors and switching on and switching off, whether people are in a specific room or not. And we actually, now people starting to go back to our offices, you can actually see the difference in your energy bill, just because of small things like that.
Well, I mean, obviously we're all having load shedding at the moment. We've got load shedding, I believe, in another 20 minutes. So so it's like another thing, like it's almost like responsible compliance. You get compliance because you have to. It's the stick that drives the compliance discussion and strategy. And then there's the like ethical or moral compliance where it's like, look, we have, a 500 office building or whatever the case is, or 100 offices or 50 offices, and these lights are on. Like if I drive through Sandton at night and I'm like, well, who's in that? Do you know what I mean? Discovery, like who's actually in that building, or who's in that building, Liberty? Like I don't think you guys are working at 1 a.m. So like, yeah. And if you think about the draw on the power grid in Africa, we have such infrastructure problems, period, as we all know. XC Insights really can help, enable a whole different type of compliance strategy for a business, in effect, right?
It definitely can. I think part of that scenario you just highlighted is the regional building design. How many of these office buildings you've got one switch to switch on the lights to a floor, and you've got one person working on a 400 square meter floor, and everything needs to burn because of it, and there is small things that you need from what's the right thing to do to fix those. But while you're doing that and bringing the right IoT devices into it, bringing the right capability from a technology perspective into it, you can really actually start to manage that entire thing with some intelligence and be proactive in how that is handled, and then once those things are in place, it becomes a lot easier because you've got the data as well to start predicting proactive maintenance schedules and not move into a traditional break-fix environment. So you can now start to track, because of the data that's there, how many hours was a specific set of lights on? When can we expect those globes to start going? I know it's probably a contentious issue because a lot of these will say that they rated for 10,000 hours and after 10 you start having problems. But, the concept is still there, and you can do your planning from a maintenance perspective and a stock carrying perspective actually out of that data when you mature to that level.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm hearing is that with XC Insights, you can really just save costs, drive operational efficiencies, become compliant in innovative ways, not just in kind of I'm doing tick box compliance stuff. And I think the other thing that I'm picking up quite clearly is that I don't even know like that you can do some of the stuff that you can do now, in terms of IoT and smart buildings and or precision farming, as you mentioned in that previous example. It's quite exciting for me to hear this kind of stuff, because I believe like oftentimes many of us, not all of us, but many of us fall into the situation where we're kind of, stuck inside the bottle and we can't read the label. So we've just been doing things the same way for so long that it's just become the way that it is. And so now, as you touched on just now, Danie, that technology is the disruptor, it is the enabler, it is the innovative platform that allows you to do things in different ways that are going to save you time, save you money, and ultimately even put your customers first at the end of the day. If you think about something like, you know, precision farming, for instance. So how important, this is a kind of an important question for me to land, in terms of innovation and IoT, is there anyone that you would point to that's kind of leading the way in the space around applications of innovative IoT? Is it exclusive to, you know, farming or agriculture or manufacturing, or are you seeing use cases in financial services and other industries?
I think there's use cases in all of them. It's more, you know, how ready is a specific organization within that vertical to start moving into those lines. I think there's leaders and great technology in all of them. And we partner with the people in those spaces that's got the same ethos that we're trying to deliver to our customers. We're not IoT experts. We don't build our own devices. We'll partner with people that we know we can trust and that's got equipment that we know is not going to fail in the solutions that we put to market. We focus on what we're strong at. That's bringing those sensors and that experience and knowledge to the table onto our platform and then making it available as a consolidated offering to our customer base. But in our experience, and back to your question, you know, there's leaders in each one of these verticals. Some organizations are just more open to the idea of adopting this digital transformation and to a large extent probably digital disruption, because you need to change your business models to work into this. You need to repurpose your people. And, you know, if you are socially responsible, you repurpose those people. You just don't put them on a retrenchment list. But you can put them in a solution where they are a lot more contributing and worth more to your business processes than what they had in the original role that they played. It does take some thinking. You know, it's an overall approach. It's not something that happens in small sandboxes and doesn't affect the rest of the business.
Absolutely. Danie, I want to change gears and actually talk about a product that I'm looking at on your website called XC Nimbus. So one of the key things that I've seen around cloud is that when you buy cloud as a business owner, it's to save cost. And then what you start to see is that the numbers start to go the wrong direction. So like we have a product called Tech Lead Bay, and it's sitting on DigitalOcean. And I'm always fascinated about how every month the bill gets bigger. And it's like, but we're not really doing much different. It's just getting more and more expensive. So the costs actually get higher, even though you get more security systems. That sounds obviously worth being on the cloud. But as you're generating data and running volumes and, you know, you hire new people, things just get more expensive, it seems. Could you walk us through what is XC Nimbus and what is the benefits of a customer in terms of using XC Nimbus in the context of controlling cloud costs?
Well, XC Nimbus is our cloud management portal. Currently, it only focuses on Azure, but the good news is we will have our internal testing on our beta version that will actually drive the same view on Office 365 costs and license utilization early next week, which we hope to take to market quite soon. So the idea basically is that you have a single portal that will provide you with insights into your Azure environment, basically looking at your entire Azure landing zone, your different subscriptions. And we come at this from 2 or 3 angles. So the first one is obviously just what's your current cost? What's your historic cost over the last 3 months so that we can predict what your growth is going to look like in 3 months or 6 months from now. Now, if there's a proper business case for it, you know, in terms of the fact that you are still migrating servers into the cloud, you expanding the workloads there, you can say, okay, from a business perspective, a finance perspective, this growth is within budget and it's understood. But what we then add into it as well is the system will then also link and show you what resources are you paying for that is in no manner linked to anything else in your system. Because those are typically potential areas where it's a wasted resource. Somebody spun a server up to do a certain test and they just never brought it down. Or they deleted a certain system out of your platform, and they left some artifacts behind that are still incurring costs. And in our experience and what we've deployed so far, there's actually quite a number of those. The systems are big, and you can miss some of this. And the idea is to surface it in such a manner that it's easy on the eye, and you can easily see what is potential issues. We've also brought in the capability to show you what is your current state of maintenance within that estate. So my VMs has got a compliance ratio of 60% or 70%, and these are the updates it's missing. And it links it directly with links back to the VM, so you can do that patch management or automate some processes in the back end of it, to make sure that from a security perspective and operational perspective, your servers and your infrastructure is running on the latest patches. And even from a security perspective, are the holes and the known vulnerabilities that's out there, are they plugged, or do we raise it there so you can immediately see it? And what's nice about it is non-technical people can now actually start to monitor the platform and leave it from there, use it instead of just being technical people that need to understand what they're looking at. The last thing that I think is important that I would like to mention is it also actually shows your compliance towards the security that Azure and AWS brings to the table. So from a CIS or NIST perspective, how compliant are you? What's the steps that you need to take to increase those compliancy scores? So it shows you with a single pane of glass what you need to do. We've got a lot of trust in the product. Where we have deployed it, it has driven impact from day one. And in fact, we believe so hard in this product that we offer it as a sponsored deployment for 14 days. And then a customer can decide whether he wants to keep it or not after the 14 days. But we present a report after the 14 days in terms of basically what's a snapshot of your current estate within the space.
That's really amazing. So you're telling me that I can get 14 days of XE numbers checking out my cloud setup, my consumption, giving me some forecasts in the future, really help me understand compliance, all that kind of stuff for free for 14 days. Is that what you're saying?
I won't say it's for free.
Come on.
That is,
come on.
It's sponsored.
You sold me the dream. You sold me the dream.
Yeah. So from a customer perspective, you won't pay for it. We will pay for it.
That's what I meant. It's basically free, guys. So go and get it. XE numbers. Go and reduce your cloud costs, please. Don't be like me, just like freaking out with anxiety around what's the number going to be next month. So it's sponsored. Okay, that's cool. I understand that. And so how fast do you think, in your experience, how quickly can you start to get insights? Is it a week into the 14-day trial? Like, how fast can you start giving me, as a business owner, insights and transparency into my cloud setup?
The deployment can be done in a couple of hours if the relevant resources with the right access levels are available to assist us from within the organization. We can start to see insights from within 24 hours to start seeing some stuff that's probably making sense. I would say you're looking at about 72 hours it starts to add color to a picture. Let's put it that way.
Sure. That's crazy. The time to value is really, really quick, eh?
Yes.
So Danie, let's wrap this up. We covered a lot of ground today. We covered XE numbers. We covered XE insights. We spoke about trends and we spoke about IoT. We spoke about cloud adoption, COVID, pandemic. We covered a lot of ground today. So I'd love to wrap this up by just asking maybe one more question, which is this. Why do you do what you do? Like, what gets you out of bed in the morning? Why is XContent around? Like, give us the answer to that. What gets you guys out of bed in the morning?
I think, speaking for myself, I'm driven by technology. My family always joke I'm a total technology junkie. I will spend money on new toys and things like that. And I think, to me, XContent is a playground where we can bring to reality those things and say, how can we build something that can add value? And I think for the people working at XContent, it's exactly the same thing. So it's part of the passion. And I think one of the worst things that I can ever think of is having to go to work every day, and it's the same job, but it was last week or last year this time, or maybe even 5 years ago. It's a changing environment, and the stuff that we do today is so different from what we did 6 months ago. And that's the environment we want to try and keep. So we do a bleeding edge stuff so that we can take leading edge stuff to our customers.
That's a great statement. Bleeding edge stuff to take leading edge stuff to our customers. That's really cool. What a truth bomb. Way to end, Danie. So thank you, Danie, for being on the show. Just if for our audience around the world in Africa kind of listening to us right now, they're going, damn, I'd really like to learn more about XContent. Where should they go to find out more information, and who should they contact at XContent to kind of move the conversation forward?
Everything is on our website, which is just xcontent.com. And on all the pages and everything that we've got there, there is call to action that will put you in touch with the relevant people for the different sections directly from those pages.
Fantastic. Danie, thank you for being in the hot seat with me today. I learned a hell of a lot. It's always great to get a Microsoft partner's view on what's going on in the market and kind of how you guys are innovating to really solve the problems of entrepreneurs and CIOs and business executives from South Africa and more broadly around the world. So thank you for being on the show. Appreciate your time.